So what is going on, guys, and welcome to this first update video. Today I'll be showing you my progress on my latest Battlefront 2 Takodana MOC. You guys asked for it, so here it is. I did a poll on my Instagram seeing if anyone would want to see this, and the results were positive, so after a while, here we are with a new video. So I started prepping this MOC a little over a year ago. At the start, this was going to be an accurate depiction of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 Takodana Supremacy map. In the first concept, I wanted to build the shrine found at Command Post D. First thing I wanted to get right was the tiling found on the floor, which as you can see is a fucking mess in the game. I worked out a system in which the tiles would be sticking out and slanted. Second thing I made was this characteristic wall thing you find everywhere on this map. Here's a breakdown of the build. A few other things I made was this pillar thing, this other pillar thing, and these crates. If you know me personally, I like to get the little details right before I start on things like terrain or buildings, since I believe that if you get the little details right, you get the most accurate depiction of the source material. After I finished making all the assets, I decided to look at the Takodana scenes in the Force Awakens, and I realized I won't be able to build this MOC for a while. I realized Battlefront 2 fucked up the colors. I was already struggling with a consistent color scheme, since if I were to stick to the colors in the game, I'd have to build the terrain in reddish brown. Thing is, which color am I going to make the trees then? Dark tan will look the most like what the game offers. Issue is that the shrine also looks best represented in dark tan, so the colors would clash and the feel of different materials would be gone. When looking at the Force Awakens, the best color for the trees would be reddish brown, buildings dark tan, and the terrain, well, dark brown. A color with a small selection of modern and useful pieces. Great plan. That's when I decided to put this MOC on ice for a minute. So for a while I did nothing. No new MOCs, no new assets. I made a Navarro MOC for the Mandalorian Season 3 collaboration, and I did a Zepho. Still, the little bits and bobs I had prepped for Takodana were laying around in my room. After taking Zepho to IDS Brickworld and Mega Brick Steenwijk, it was time to revisit Takodana. While placing Bricklink and online brick-a-brick orders, I slowly built up my collection of dark brown, buying up plates, tiles, slopes, and sadly, no 1x1 curved tiles, since they don't exist in dark brown. Anyway, after selling my kidneys and buying dark brown, I decided to grab my old assets and reevaluate what my plans for this MOC were gonna be. I decided not to build the shrine, so I scrapped all the floor tiles I'd prepped a year earlier. I went back into the game and had a little walk around the forest, the castle, and the refueling station. The next plan was to build the left side of the castle entrance with a portion of the lake and forest. So I started designing the castle wall. I had my TV on with the game while designing and saw that not only does the wall slope up, it also slants inwards, basically forming a triangle. So I whipped up this little thing and decided, due to the lack of 1x2 dark tan grill slopes, which at the time did not exist, thank you Hogwarts Castle and Grounds, I wasn't going to be building the castle at all. Then I figured, let's just see if I can even build the trees, since if I couldn't get those right, I may as well just scrap the whole thing. So I started building, basing my first attempt on a tree found in front of my house. I built a tree around a combination of Travis bricks and flex tubes, creating this semicircular shape and using loads of different slopes, brackets and plates to differentiate the roundness of the bark. When reaching the end of the, let's call it, main bark, I split the trunk up into 2 bits, just like the real thing. Getting this to be stable was quite a trick, but I somewhat worked it out in the end. The leaves I made out of the 3-petal leaf piece, green and dark green leaf pieces, various brown stems, and other things. The trunk of a tree of course gets slimmer when reaching the top, so I still use Travis bricks and flex tubes, but now exclusively made use of plates and small slopes to form the bark. I also used some elephant tusk pieces to get some different shapes and angles. I was pretty happy after finishing my first attempt, so I decided to make a couple more, none of which I was quite as happy with as with the first, so most of these just got scrapped or just broke due to bumping into my shelf and me not giving two shits. After taking a little hiatus from building, I went back and decided to build the area around Command Post A. Of course, the first thing I do is figure out the small but important details. So I made this fuel canister holding pipe thing and made sure to pay close attention to the game as I designed it. Next thing I did was figure out how to get the sloping found on the walls of this building just right. I came up with this design which uses cheese slopes, since grill slopes in dark tan weren't a thing. That's also why you'll find my recreation is slightly longer than the one found in the game, something which required some tweaking later on. When I took another look at the building and saw what gormous things were on top of it, I decided to go with the other building as the base design. But I took some concepts from the first and applied them there, blending the two together. I managed to crank out the basic pattern pretty quickly, so when I had some time off school, I started on the bits which stick out the back and front. These determining the overall size and scale of the building and the entire MOC later on. The bit on the back is pretty simple and straightforward, using some brackets and snob bricks in order to have the brick build sections also stick out 1 plate from the wall, as if it were made out of tiles. The thing on the front, which has 2 pipes coming from it, and some other interesting shapes, posed more of a challenge. The first and easiest thought was to just build it out of slopes. However, since the thing slopes up at an interesting angle, I figured it needed something more stupid and more complex. I took one of the ideas from my scrapped castle wall and used 1x1 clips and this minifigure accessory piece to have a pillar of 1x1 snot bricks with tiles on the side rest against these newer wedge plates. Doing so also made sure the angle of the snot section would be the same as the stuff which sticks out, which I decided was going to be made out of mostly wedge plates and tiles. The ball thing at the back of the building I made using this ball technique, which I first used on my castle MOC way back in 2019. After all that jazz with the building, I went back to the movie and had a look at the trees. I was convinced Takodana didn't really have any pine trees, but then I saw these things, so I had a crack at building them. These are some of the designs I came up with in order to avoid using the same old technique everyone has been using since the dawn of time. However, it ended up being too fragile and parts intensive. After wasting time on Christmas trees, I went and threw this together for the grill in front of the building. In the game, you'll see this liquid flowing under the grills, so I used this technique to give its disgusting color. Staying on the topic of water, when playing the game and paying close attention, you'll find the ground is covered in puddles. So I did what no person in their right mind should do. I drew out exactly where all the puddles go in the game and built the rest of the MOC around these 2 sheets of paper. I used a combination of snot and regular building to get the shape I wanted. In order to get the color right, I went with a trans brown tile, a trans clear stud, and a dark green plate. For all the snot sections, I tried to get them the same color as the regular bits. However, it didn't turn out exactly as I wanted it to. I think though, adding white underneath the snot sections does more good than bad. The timeline of this MOC is right around Christmas 2023. So I took a little break from building. Christmas is of course the time when you treat other people. How about you treat yourself too sometime? Now might be a good time to talk about this MOC sponsor, Tijn. Tijn is the go-to for all your custom LEGO needs in Europe, with a large assortment of GCC products and also his own stuff, like these awesome holograms, droid packbacks, and much more. Besides custom products, Tijn also has a large selection of official LEGO minifigures and even these rare prototypes. Check out his catalog account for, well, his catalog, and place an order via his main account, Tijn, over on Instagram. After New Year's, I started using the water outline drawings to start on the terrain. I made sure to keep the building unattached so it would be easier for me to plan out where all the puddles had to go. After finishing up most of the left side, I went ahead and placed the grill section onto the actual MOC and started the process of placing a fuel canister pump holding thing into the terrain too. In the game, it has a slight offset, so I had to play around with some funny shapes to smoothly integrate it with the terrain. After all that, I got started on the thing I'd been avoiding starting for ages, the Rockwork. This is because I wanted to try something new at this part of the MOC. Instead of doing the conventional Star Wars MOC Rockwork, I wanted to take the military builder approach and make the sloping blend in with the terrain a bit more. This is because the rocks found in the game are more individual rocks as opposed to a blob or solid mass. I first played around with some net pieces, however what I wanted to do with the terrain just wouldn't be possible. So then I came up with a couple of ways to angle plates in a way which doesn't look like shit and also keeps them in place when you bump into the MOC or have to transport it. First one works like this. You need a snot brick, a 1x1 bracket, and 2 1x1 cheese slopes. You stick them together like so, and then add some plates or slopes on the exposed stud, and place it against a little box in your terrain. I use this technique right here. The second one will require these 2 1x1 brackets, an inverted 1x2 curved slope, these 1x1 clips, a jumper, and a regular tile. Just put it together like so, add some plates on top, and angle it in every which way you see fit. Now for the actual rocks, I paid close attention to the rocks found in the game and tried to recreate them down to the tiny details. So you'll see some dark brown cutting off a bit of the rock here, and this larger rock on the corner, as seen here. I also placed some of the rocks at an offset, such as this one. Next up was to get started on the right side of the MOC, which also kind of finalized the entire width of the thing. So I expanded the base plate and got to work on making the puddles. It was also finally time to add the 2 walls I had laying around for well over a year. So I tweaked their designs a bit and placed them on opposite sides of the building. I want to take a minute to talk about one of my favorite things to design, crates. On my latest Camino, I featured this design for this fuel thing. However, for Takodana, I wanted to go a little bit bigger, so I kept some aspects but changed the structure to be easier and bulkier. It comes apart in 2 halves and is attached using this bracket. We all know this iconic crate. It's found in almost every map in the most recent Battlefront games. However, on most designs, a key detail found on these crates is lost. The black oval on top. So with my latest design, I wanted to make sure I had that on there. This crate also comes apart in 2 halves and can be attached using this modified bar piece. Another crate that always just seems to pop up in Battlefront 2, regardless of what area you're playing in, is this one. This is another crate I've attempted many times before. My first design was quite rough, so for this one I wanted to get it right. I used a 1x3 brick and then placed 1x1 and 1x2 brackets on the sides. Connected them with a 2x3 plate, placed 2x2 brackets on opposite sides, and then placed ingot tiles on all sides. While building my trees last year, I also played around with designs for slimmer trees, which are also found in-game. I was still debating between building them out of 2x2 round brick or Technic axle connectors. I went with the latter, due to the fact you can get more detail in using these pieces, and that they make for sturdier trees. Instead of building the tree first and worrying about attaching it later, I built this one into the MOC from the get-go. Now these boys can be quite tall, so I had to make sure the leaves were attached in a sturdier way than just a plate and a clip. So I went with these Technic pieces as the main way of attaching them, making for a less fragile and cleaner design. So that about does it for this first update video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little different from what I used to upload, so let me know in the comments what you think. I don't really have a time frame set in stone for the second video. It will probably release around June or July of this year. Once again, massive thanks to Tijn for sponsoring this MOC. Be sure to check out his Instagram. Be sure to follow my Instagram to stay up to date with my latest whips, which I'll also be sharing in the Empire Lord Discord server. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on to stay up to date with my latest content. And as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.